Calumet Editions, an eclectic publisher of fiction, nonfiction, and poetry, introduced a new business model nearly a decade ago, in which the publisher and author work as equal partners in a joint venture. Their stable of authors have won numerous and prestigious prizes across literary forms. Where traditional publishers fail to see the value in projects, Calumet cooperates with his authors in realizing a book's potential.
Welcome to Writer's Corner. Alan Miller with you for a change, and well, not for a change, but let's say I'm still with you. We have two terrific guests today. On my left, Renee Valois, and we're taping this on Halloween, and she happens to be a ghostwriter. But she's not a ghostwriter who writes books for other people. She writes books about ghosts. In fact, her latest book, which is displayed right here, is called Collecting Spirits, and we'll get to talk about that. Our other guest, who's a return guest, Josh Weber of Calumet Editions, and disclaimer, they're also my publisher, and what else can I say? They're also our sponsor, I should say that. So welcome to both of you.
Thanks for having us.
Renee, let's start with you. How did you get into the paranormal and the spirit world?
Well, to be honest, I did not believe in ghosts. I'd always been told they were made-up stories. You know, you tell stories around the campfire, and you see all these stupid movies from Hollywood that are over the top about ghosts. So I thought, oh, they're not real. But then I had an experience. I had gotten a gift certificate to go to this wonderful salon spa, and I thought, I'm going to go there and get a massage. And I was in a room naked under a sheet on a padded table. This young woman was giving me a wonderful massage. There was a counter across the room that had a large metal tray on it with a bunch of...
That's one of your first stories.
It is.
Yeah.
They had a metal tray with various metal cosmetic tools on it. In the middle of my massage, this tray lifts off the counter and flies off on the floor with a loud crash. Nobody is near it. There's nobody else in the room. And I'm like, what the heck? The young woman goes, oh, that's like the second or third time that's happened. Always with women. She said, I think the guys get a little excited. And I'm looking around going, guys? There's like nobody in the room but us. She goes, yeah, this used to be a Masonic temple and some of the guys have stuck around.
And
it's
so
haunted.
You started collecting ghost stories.
Well, what happened after that is I was like, nobody has ever told me they've had a paranormal experience. So I thought, is it really rare? Is nobody having these experiences? But it happened to me. So I started going around to people, especially if I could get them alone so they wouldn't feel self-conscious. And I'd say, I had a paranormal experience once. Has anything like that ever happened to you? And I was shocked at how many people would tell me, I've never told anyone this because I was afraid they'd think I was crazy. Yeah, and then they tell me this amazing story.
My two experiences with you in a few moments, but Renee is an award-winning writer. She's also a poet of some note, and in fact she's on her way to a conference tomorrow to be the speaker, and she also used to do reviews for the St. Paul Pioneer Press.
Yeah, I did book reviews for the Minneapolis Tribune, but I did theater reviews for St. Paul Pioneer Press. Yeah.
I'd like to ask.
And they're both graduates of the University of Minnesota.
Yeah?
Yay.
Yeah. Josh also, in addition to being a principal with Calumet now, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's cool.
Has been with KFAI for 8 years as a writer and producer and host. Mm-hmm. And Calumet Editions is a boutique publisher, and they only handle the best writers, because I say that because they handle me. But he's a native Minnesotan, Coon Rapids, New Hope, and he's also treasurer of the Midwest Independent Publishers Association.
You did your research.
And he's associated with the Afton Press, which does nonfiction, historical, and nonprofit publications. So How's the publishing business?
Publishing scene right now is a little chaotic, a bit busy, but that's always very fun for me. It's very stimulating right now. We're gearing up because Rain Taxi is coming up on November 8th from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. happening next week. So I've been trying to get all the authors together who are going to be attending with us to get enough copies available for the event that they can sell. Also making sure on our end we are planning the logistics of getting that set up for everyone to be there in a punctual fashion. So it's been a bit of a rush right now, as you can imagine, but stay on top of it.
I will not be displaying there this year, but stick out a couple of my books.
I definitely would do that, or I hope you attend as well, Alan.
I don't know.
You don't know?
You know,
Okay.
after this recent fall that I had, I'm not sure that I didn't show you the pictures. I didn't want to gross you out, but I will.
On Halloween, it's a good thing to gross people
Yeah.
out. I'll be
Yeah.
at that conference too. I have a table there
Really?
You
Yeah.
will.
Great.
at Twin City Book Festival.
So you have collected so many stories from so many people
Yep.
of, I wouldn't say out-of-body experiences, but ghost experiences, paranormal, and you broke them down into really categories.
Well, I did to a certain extent because the place where I had my first experience, I ended up calling it the Temple of Ghosts because they have so much activity there. And every time I thought, I'm coming back here all the time now because I want to hear what's going on. Maybe I'll have another experience. I have never had another experience there, but they have lots of experiences, the people who work there. And so I'd say, what happened recently? Oh, we were all meeting down in the basement and there was chairs at the back of the room. One of them lifted off the ground and flew across the room and smashed into the wall. You know, things like that. We hear this little girl talking in the bathroom when nobody else is in there, and just lots of stuff. So I'm like, I wrote all those down, but I also wrote down anything other people told me. I'd be at a party and talk to somebody, and they'd tell me, or at work somebody would tell me, and I just recorded them all.
Yeah, you
And I
gotta
wasn't
keep your
intending to
voice up a little bit.
Okay, I was not intending to write a book. I wrote down the stories for my own benefit because I wanted to remember them because they were so amazing. And eventually, I took classes. I met a woman who has been able to see ghosts everywhere all the time since she was a baby. Her grandmother realized her ability and started taking her to funerals at age 3 to talk to the dead people. And she'd say, they can't find their will. Where is the will? And she'd talk to the ghost and say, where is the will? And he'd say, oh, it's in this secret drawer in my desk. You have to do this and this to find it. And they'd go and find it. So she brought this little girl for years to funerals. So she kept her ability alive. And she now, when she walks around, says, I see ghosts everywhere. They're all over the place. People aren't aware of it. And I have to pretend I don't see them because if I look into a ghost's eyes, they know I see them. They're going to come rushing over and want to talk to me. They haven't been able to talk to anyone for a long time. And she doesn't want to be harassed constantly.
Interesting.
I'd like to ask you.
Yes.
So when you write, Renee, do you lead with intuition or analysis, or do they somehow meet in the middle for you?
Well, that's interesting.
Because my sense is you're a very intuitive person.
I am pretty intuitive. I do sometimes feel ghosts. I have never seen a ghost, but I can feel them sometimes when they're around. But when I write, I'm thinking more probably. I'm in that thinking brain, but I also am more open to believing in things now than I used to be because of my experiences.
I've actually seen one, which we'll talk about
Oh
in a few
yeah, I
moments.
want to hear about that. So intuition is very important to me. I do rely on my intuition, but I also like to analyze things. Like, could that have been something else other than a ghost? Like in the case where I had my first experience, there was no other explanation. There was nobody near it. The windows weren't open. How would a thing fly across the room like that?
That's the weird thing.
And somebody else witnessed it. I think if you witness something on your own, you can say, oh, my eyes tricked me or I was imagining it. But when multiple people see it, it's harder to explain away.
What's doing with Calumet?
We have a lot of different publications coming out right now, 3 of which I have on display right here. I can't see the back end, but the one I'm actually very excited about, I spent a lot of time working with, was with the author Gary Porter on his book, Little Rex, A Night at Sleepy Hollow Cemetery. If you don't mind a brief little description about this. I think you may like this, Renee. Lost and alone in the streets of Boston, Rex wanders into Sleepy Hollow Cemetery in Concord, Massachusetts on the Day of the Dead, the resting place of literary giants Louisa May Alcott, Henry David Thoreau, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and Ralph Waldo Emerson. But on this night, the veil between the worlds lifts and the authors return for one final walk through the places that shaped their stories. Little Rex, it combines history and imagination in a heartwarming tale of loyalty, courage, and really focus on the enduring power of words. That's a book I'm really excited about that we have just put out. And Gary Porter, along with his wife Melissa, will be at Rain Taxi with us. And
Maybe here one of these days.
I would like to. I know that was one thing I really tried to have them be available for this today to talk with us
We're
about
so
it.
blessed with having great writers in Minnesota.
Oh, yeah.
And so many of them that
Yeah.
that's the purpose of this program, is to expose them to the 36 cities that are in our network. And so that sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
You'll have to put us in touch.
Definitely will. Love to do that.
Okay.
We also have, I think, in the listing there is Tilt-A-Whirl. Tilt-A-Whirl is from Scott Vetch. It captures the turbulence of the 1960s and 70s through a series of vivid, interlocking stories that trace one boy's passage from small-town wonder to restless awakening. Bridging both sides of the Mississippi, Vetch's poetic storytelling moves through the basement bands and AM radios, joyrides and heartbreaks, the heady rush of rebellion and the quiet ache of consequences. Evocative, musical, and deeply human, Scott Vetch's Tilt-A-Whirl turns nostalgia into motion, memory into melody, and adolescence into art. Vetch is also a poet in the area as well, doing a lot of different events. I'm sure a lot of our viewers probably has also heard of him too.
Now, my family and I used to go skiing in in Massachusetts, and we were in South Egremont. There was a place called the Red Saber Inn before we had a house up there, and we would stay at the Red Saber Inn on the second floor. The kids in one room, my wife and I in another room, and the third floor was an attic. We had our dogs with us. One night, I hear footsteps above us and then coming down the steps. The hair on the dog's back went up and they started growling. My son Peter, who happens to live here in Minnesota now, heard it also. It came down the steps and seemed to stop at the door. So I got up with the dogs, being that brave, threw open the door, and there's nothing there. So the next morning, I said to the owner, Bill Bender, what's going on? I should mention that this inn was right next to a graveyard. I mean, literally right next to the graveyard. So I said to Bill Bender, we heard footsteps last night. What were you doing upstairs? And he said, oh, that wasn't me. That was the Curtis ghost.
Curtis ghost?
And I said, what's the Curtis ghost? And he said, Curtis is buried out there, but every once in a while he comes over here. And I said, you're putting me on. and he said, no. And I ultimately checked, and I found that even before they owned the inn, people had experienced the Curtis ghost. So every once in a while, he would get up and come over to the inn, where he committed suicide, by the way.
Oh, okay. That is more of an explanation of why he's hanging around. A lot of ghosts are people who don't want to go to the other side because they're afraid of how they might be punished. So if they committed suicide or did other things, they might be afraid they're going to be punished, so they don't want to go to the other side. And that could be the case of this person.
That could be. So, in fact, I was just talking to my son last night about this, and he remembered it even more vividly than I. But 7 years ago, I had an operation at the Mayo, and of course, their hospital for operations is St. Mary's Hospital. I woke up after the operation, and there was a nurse in my room. A nurse dressed as nurses dress 100 years ago. And I couldn't understand it, and she seemed to be checking on me and looking, and I spoke. She didn't speak back, so I picked up the buzzer, thinking that I'm still under the anesthetic, and I pressed the buzzer, and a nurse, today's nurse, came in, and I said, who was that nurse who was here dressed in a costume that she would have worn 100 years ago? And she said, oh, that was Mother Alfred. She was the first nurse here, and she likes to check on the patients after the operations. And it was either her or it was Sister Joseph, because they both hang around here, and you're not the only one.
Multiple people admitted they had encounters with these ghosts. You're saying?
Yeah, and yesterday I found this. St. Mary's Hospital in Rochester, Minnesota has become the focus of several ghostly tales and haunted experiences, ranging from first-hand reports of eerie activity at the hospital to stories shared during local paranormal tours. So I just found...
That's amazing. You got to actually see a ghost. I have not. I would love to see one. I've seen tons of
I mean,
poltergeist activity.
I know
Yeah.
she was there.
Yeah.
And of course, anybody that I related the story to says, you're coming out of the anesthesia. And
No, because other people have seen her.
And
That's what I was asking. That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say too that ghosts tend to hang around hospitals in general. So many people die there. There's a lot of energy. Ghosts are pure energy. They're what's left when your body, if you've ever seen a person die, they just kind of sink down. The energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So that energy leaves, and that's the soul, that's the spirit. They need energy to keep going as ghosts here. So they have to tap energy from the living. And so they tend to go places where there's a lot of people, hospitals, shopping centers, sports arenas.
well, Mother Alfred actually was the first nurse, and she trained 5 other nurses. And she became the assistant to one of the Mayo brothers in operations. And this is in 1860, 1864, 5, something like that. So I'm convinced that I saw her.
Absolutely.
I'm convinced that she was in the room with me, I guess checking me out.
I believe it. And she might have stuck around because she felt such an incredible tie to the place. It was her life. And she still wants to oversee it and be part of it. That's probably why she stuck around.
I'd like to ask you then, so
Yeah.
Renee, your work explores the intersection of the seen and the unseen, the supernatural and the hidden self. What draws you repeatedly towards those liminal spaces?
That's a perfect thing. I love liminal spaces. I love twilight, dawn. My favorite times of a day are not like full day. It's more like the in-between times. And liminal spaces like stairways. I'll tell you, when I was a kid, I used to challenge myself to walk up the stairs. I bought my parents' house that was built in the 20s. I always loved that house. I used to challenge myself to walk up the stairway in the dark when no one's up there at night, and I'd get to the top of the stairs and you'd turn right down the hallway and I'd feel a man standing in the doorway of my parents' bedroom. I couldn't see him, but I felt him. There was a man there. I knew it was a man. I wasn't afraid of him because he was always in the house. My whole memory was he was always there. So I'm like, okay, whatever. I walked down the hall to my bedroom. When I told him, I never told anyone this. I never talked about it. He just came with the house. I didn't think of him as being a ghost. But when I was doing my book, I mentioned it to my sister, and she said, oh my God. She shared a bedroom with me at the end of the hall. She said, I used to feel a man come and stand in the doorway of our bedroom. And I was like terrified that he was going to come over. I knew it wasn't Dad. And she said, I pretend to be asleep. I'm asleep. Don't come over. Don't come over. She was afraid of him. I wasn't. I learned later, as an adult, my parents didn't tell us, that the man who built our house in the 1920s committed suicide in the house. And I think it was him. I don't think he meant harm. I think he was curious. He was looking over the family.
Suicide story.
Yeah, he was looking over the family. He eventually left.
I've a very similar experience to that. So growing up, the closest thing I can describe is like a ghostly encounter. When I was a kid, I was in bed, and what I remember seeing, and it was in the doorway, it was this black apparition, and it was wearing it was like a hat.
Oh, the Hat Man.
So when I was a kid, I freaked out. I was terrified, and I remember going under my sheets. And I kind of kept this to myself, never saying anything about it to anyone. And then years later, I found that it's a global phenomenon. People seeing the Hat Man. I don't know if you could, maybe you could talk more a bit about that, because I don't know enough about it. But I know I recognize that as a pattern, though, that many people have said they've seen.
None of my stories involve the Hat Man, but lots of people have had that experience of seeing a dark-shaped figure with a hat.
It's flat brimmed, and
usually
it's like down.
It's a lot big brim,
right?
and some people say top hat, but usually it's more of that wide brim
right.
kind of thing.
Well, Mother Alfred had a cap on also, as nurses did 100 years ago, 150 years ago.
But it didn't have that brim.
No, it didn't have a brim.
And most people think of the Hat Man as going there to scare people, like deliberately scaring kids or whatever.
My recollection was just maybe curious. It was almost observing me, watching me. And there was more of an interest, but I never.
It wasn't threatening.
I never I never got the sense there was any kind of malevolent and
That's
like
good.
harm in my way. That I never had that. It was just something that was peculiar and strange, and I didn't know. And
Yeah,
that
a lot of
scared me.
people have had that experience. I have not seen a Hat Man, but yeah.
So, talk about what's different about Calumet with other publishers.
Calumet is different. So, generally speaking, Calumet it could be classified as a hybrid publisher, but one of my partners, Ian, will I describe as a joint venture acquisitional publishing entity, which basically just means that we ask our authors to co-invest in producing a work. They share the risk and the reward with us. So we ask them to share part of the cost, and we also share that cost through our efforts and labor of producing the work with them. It's something we've been doing with a lot of success since 2015 now. So we're going on for about 10 years.
Oh, wow.
So the thing which I like about it, it's, in my view, it's more democratized compared to traditional publishers, that it's a partnership with the author, which can be good and bad because the authors have their own input, their own ideas about this, and we have to vet it, we have to hear them out. But at the end of the day, we have a better book as a result. To me, it's an ideal relationship to have with your author and a publisher.
Now, who does the editing of your books?
Well, there wasn't a lot of editing done. They liked it. It's through Down and Out Books. And they actually let me have input into the cover, which was nice. I liked how it turned out. They did require me to kind of, I had section 1, section 2, section 3. They didn't want 3 sections. So they made me get rid of that. But the chapters all kind of stayed the same.
You have multiple chapters.
Yeah, I have many chapters. And
Yeah.
so they had a copy editor that basically was like, oh, don't use this word or whatever. There wasn't a lot of editing. It was just copy editing, minor copy editing.
Did you find it to be a collaborative process at all?
Yeah, because they said if you disagree, let us know, and there were times when I did. It was more, a little bit of word choice. She didn't like me reusing this one word, which I liked, and certain grammatical things she wanted, but it wasn't huge. It didn't take very long at all.
Calumet does the editing, makes suggestions, mostly of which I oppose, and
That's funny.
but they also do the line editing, which is so important. And people don't realize that putting a book out is not just writing and sitting down and having it appear. There's the copyright, there's the cover, which is very important.
Yeah, I was happy with my cover.
I was
actually.
very unhappy with the last cover of my latest book, and as a matter of fact, it's the worst seller that I've had. So I should have stuck to my guns about that cover. But it's multifaceted.
Yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
of course, they do some publicity also, and
That's good.
Here we all are.
Yeah, that's good.
I want to ask you, Renee, you've written about ghosts and memory and about everyday hauntings, like grief, regret, and love. How do you see the supernatural as a metaphor for the things that linger in ordinary life?
Well, I see it as very concrete, not
True,
just a metaphor.
but
It's real.
I'm trying
but-
I'll take a literary angle.
Yeah,
at this, which
here
is why I wanna-
as a metaphor.
yeah.
I mean, we are haunted by our past in many ways. I mean, not just through ghosts, but a lot of times people have regrets over things they did or didn't do. So you can feel haunted even if there's no ghost in your house. So it can be a metaphor for how the choices you've made in your life, good and bad, and where they took you. So I don't think anyone should be haunted by their past. They should learn from their mistakes and move on, I personally feel. But yeah, ghosts, I mean, definitely are a great symbol of what did you do wrong, or what mistakes have you made, what do you regret? And certainly the symbol of grief, to your point, I mean, some people have had relatives appear to them as ghosts, and they were terrified of them. And I'm like, why? That's just someone you love. But the idea of a ghost terrifies people.
Sure.
The idea of a ghost, even if it's somebody they know, which I always found surprising.
Generally, ghosts are really good people. Ghosts don't try to do damage, but there are paranormal incidents where they have been detrimental.
Yes, this is not in my book because I still am collecting stories. I've had 2 separate women tell me they lived in these really old farmhouses. One of them said when I was pregnant walking down the stairs one day, my eyes suddenly went dark. I couldn't see anything, and I was shoved down the stairs. She fell down the stairs. She was pregnant. She fortunately didn't break anything, but she was bruised. She was shocked. It didn't happen again until she became pregnant again. When she was pregnant with her second child, she started walking down the stairs. Again, everything went dark and she was shoved down the stairs. They said, we got to get out of here. This ghost apparently does not like kids. Doesn't want kids around. So that was a ghost that could have done great damage.
Yeah.
She didn't lose the babies. She didn't break anything, but she was shook up and bruised.
On 2 occasions.
On 2 occasions before they said, we got to get out of here. But that's rare, to your point. Most ghosts don't physically try to harm people.
And of course, there are going to be people who are watching this who completely disbelieve us.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a skeptic until I had my first experience, and that's 50 years ago with the Curtis ghost. And then I had my second one 7 years ago.
So you had further proof. But
Yeah.
I would say that most of the people I talk to, I'll ask if, before I tell them, I'll say, have I had a paranormal experience? Has anything like that happened to you? If they say no and look at me funny, I drop it, But typically the people who've had experiences are the ones who believe in ghosts, and those who have had no experiences don't believe in ghosts. They don't realize how many people are having experiences because nobody's talking about it. They're afraid to tell people because they'll think I'm crazy. So it's happening a lot, and it's a really well-kept secret.
Well, I never believed in it.
Yeah.
Until. You never believed in it until.
Exactly. I didn't believe in it until. And I'm like, what? It's real? So that's the kind of the funny. But it's...
Now you have a compiling for a second book?
I am collecting more stories, and people keep saying, are you going to do a sequel? And I'm like, well, if the first one does well enough, they'll probably want to publish a second one, hopefully. I would love to.
Last thing, so I've not mentioned, so the other authors can be with us at Rain Taxi. I have her short story collection there. It's called Escapes and Other Stories. In this compelling collection, Susan Covet explores the lies we tell ourselves and the flights we take to outpace them. Escape and Other Stories gathers 15 finely crafted tales where characters flee from places, names, past, and even themselves. Whether you see a quick literary escape or a deeper plunge into what happens when escape ends, Escapes and Other Stories doesn't just provide refuge, it demands your attention.
These all sound like great books.
Susan Covet, I'm a super remarkable, profound author. I'm very happy to have her work with Calumet.
Well, you've got a ton of authors, literally.
We have
Calumet.
I think right now in our catalog, I was just going through our author dashboard, we have 156 authors we have worked with so far.
Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now
It's
you
grown.
said you have nonfiction through Afton?
No, okay, so we have, Calumet does nonfiction and fiction. We do,
Oh, okay.
and poetry as well. And Afton is primarily focused on Minnesota history and history of Minnesota art.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's sort of the panoply, the full circle.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah. And you are one of 3 principals in Calumet.
One of 3 principals, along with the founders, Ian Graham Leask and Gary Lindbergh.
Gary has a long history in film, among other things.
Since background, Ian has been involved in the literary scene for decades in Minneapolis. I think he was involved with the Loft Literary Center and a bunch of other stuff. We've actually I wanted to mention as well before we're done, that
And we're almost done.
we're almost done, that we have also picked up a pretty well acclaimed Minnesota author, Brian Dern, has joined our publishing family. He's currently working on a new novel with us called Days Bring Back the Night. Known for his lyrical prose and deeply human storytelling, Dern brings a voice that blends emotional depth with sharp social insight.
Very cool.
Last thoughts.
Well, I encourage people to take a look at my book if you get a chance, but also if you have any stories, contact me. Come to my website. I don't know if you're going to put it up or not, but you can contact me and let me know if you have stories to share. I would
It'll
love to
be
hear.
up when we put this together,
Cool.
the technical people.
I would love to hear your stories.
And I want to thank Renee Valois and Josh Weber for a very different Writer's Corner here on Halloween, although you won't be seeing it on Halloween. Thank you both.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure to be here.